Hey guys, here's another Creepypasta review coming up now, and this is pasta I don't think many of you have ever heard, if at all. I managed to find this pasta on the Internet Archive, that was, I think, online like for 2 or so years before it was taken down, but it's always been in the back of my mind, so I figure why not talk about it this Christmas. So this is Bible Adventures, and I like the idea of like a deleted game or like a deleted mini game that was supposed to be part of the game before it was taken out for whatever reason. Except in this case, it seems like someone was going way too far with how they wanted to teach kids about the Bible because, well, you'll figure out once you hear the story. But surprisingly, there's no blood or gore. If you're thinking that, like the way I said, there's actually nothing like that in the story. It's just, it's actually kind of interesting where they go. Like, it refers to the Bible, but it actually doesn't have anything that references any scenario where it'd be like bloody or gore. Like, there is an end at the end. You'll see like I guess the guy who found out about this was hypnotized and nearly stabbed his own 3-year-old son with a butcher's knife, thinking it was like a goat or something. But it obviously never happens, thankfully. But you can see how far they were trying to go with the story, but not make it too cliche. Actually, this story isn't that bad. It's not too cliche. It's not gory in any way, and I like the mechanics behind it. I like how it's described about all the technicals and whatnot. I think this is a pretty good story. I think it's a pretty good underrated story that you guys should give a chance to. I'll leave a link in the description below, and you can give it a chance yourself. I've always been into video games, ever since my father came home one day with an Atari 2600. Me and my brother would play for hours on end, never mind the long graphics or the light gameplay. It was just fun. It wasn't long though until Atari gave way to Nintendo and my brother left home to join the army. Then it was just me playing Mario and Zelda for hours and hours into the night. Recently, I have been thinking of those old times and decided I wanted to get back into retro gaming. Oh god, how I wish I had. At first, it was innocent enough. I still have my old NES and a few games, and there's even a game store in town that sells the old cards for only a couple of bucks each. But then I found out about emulators, thousands of games to play, some of which were never released for the NES, and some that were made by other gamers like myself. These were my favorite old classic games that have been modified by other gamers to include things that we always thought should have been in there in the first place. I decided I wanted to try it myself. I mean, how hard could it be? I can program in C++ and Java. I was sure I could learn alt of the old 6502 the NES uses. So I downloaded a user-made development kit and got a copy of Bible Adventures by World Tree Entertainment. For one, it's a game I actually owned, which makes me feel a little bit better about having the ROM image. And two, it was never actually licensed to be on the NES anyway, so who are they to talk if I alter it, right? I booted up my development kit and loaded the Bible Adventures ROM. It took me a couple of minutes of looking at the code to get a feel for how it was written. The commands were different than I was used to, and I had to look a couple of them up on the web, but it wasn't much of a problem. And before long, I was reading it like it was English. That's when I noticed it. A full selection of code, some kind of subroutine was nulled out. Intrigued as to why someone would mark out a subroutine and not simply just delete it, I began studying the code. Try as I might, I couldn't figure it out, other than it called for some sprites and responses from the controllers, so I made the worst decision of my life. I unmarked the subroutine and reassembled the code into the ROM. I started out my emulation program and loaded the reassembled version of the Bible Adventures ROM and started it up. At first, all I got was a brown screen with a few ASCII letters placed randomly across the screen. For half a second, I actually thought of taking the card out and blowing into it, until I remembered that this was ROM. Disappointed, and thinking the subroutine must be preventing the game from playing, I went for the mouse to shut the game off. But before I could touch the mouse, the opening screen for the game popped up. It looked the same as the actual card. A black screen with a picture of what I think is supposed to be Mary holding baby Moses, with a blue bubble next to the picture for a selection screen. Only this time, there were 4 selections to choose from instead of the normal 3. Noah's Ark, baby Moses, and David and Goliath were still there, but added to the selection was the Revelation of St. John. Then it dawned on me. The subroutine was another game selection intended to be a part of the game, but for some reason was marked out of the program. I figured that the programmer must have ran out of time and was unable to finish the game. But then again, why keep it? Why not just delete it from the file? I selected the Revelation of St. John from the menu, expecting the game to crash. Instead, I was greeted with a shocking image that filled the screen. On the screen was an image of a bloody goat head with 7 horns and 7 eyes glaring into the screen. In 8-bit detail, it almost looked comical, but the subject matter made the acid in my stomach start turning like a washing machine. The game seemed to have frozen and did not progress beyond the image, but in the background there was sound. I could barely hear it, but it was there. Not music really, but sound. I left the room and got my headphones, plugged them into the computer, and increased the volume to max. The sound is hard to explain. Kind of a buzzing, kind of a clicking rhythmic, but not music. I listened intently and started picturing strange things in my mind. I imagined myself on a high bluff overlooking the ocean. An old sword was in my hand, and a goat was before me, chained to the ground. I brought the sword high above my head, intent on severing the goat's head from its body, when suddenly I was awoken by the scream of my girlfriend. I opened my eyes to find I was kneeling in my kitchen. I had no idea how I had gone there. A butcher knife was in my hand, and my 3-year-old son lay in front of me on the kitchen floor. Thank heaven he was fine. But the thought of what might have happened had Jill not come home when she did, has nearly driven me insane.